Welcome back. We loved catching up with the two panelists, of course, two comedians from the show Deliciousness. And Carly, you heard me kind of poke fun at myself. I mean, I do not cook. I would have joke after joke when I spend time in the kitchen.
Well, I don't think Erica Schlick, though, has very many bloopers in the kitchen. She seems to know what she's doing. And this morning's recipe is for herb-crusted rack of lamb. So watch this.
A roasted rack of lamb is one of the most elegant yet simple and delicious meals that you can prepare for your family this holiday season or as an easy weeknight dinner. Now, to prepare the meat, I've gone ahead and put my rack of lamb here in a roasting pan, but before we did that, I went ahead and heated about 1 tablespoon of coconut oil in a cast iron skillet over medium to high heat, and we're gonna go ahead and sear each side of the meat for about 2 to 3 minutes before we get started. Now, once you've seared your meat, I've gone ahead and transferred it into my ceramic roasting pan, and now we're going to prepare a delicious herb crust that is going to sit on top of it. Now I have a 1/4 cup of fresh cut rosemary here, and I've gone ahead and chopped that, and I have 1 tablespoon of fresh thyme that's also been chopped, and I have 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. I have 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. You can also use fresh garlic. You can use about 1 to 2 cloves if you prefer fresh, and I have 1 teaspoon of sea salt. Now I'm going to go ahead and mix this together, but it should resemble more of a paste-like texture because you just want this to kind of sit on top of the meat and not really fall off too much. Now, lamb on its own is actually quite flavorful, so you don't need to put too much seasoning and too many herbs on this because you really want the flavor of the lamb to come through. And I always recommend using a grass-fed lamb, especially when you're gonna have something with a little bit of a layer of fat on it, just because the fats are gonna be much healthier for you than if you use a grain-fed animal. Now, we're gonna go ahead and put this in the oven at 350 degrees, and I like to roast it for about 15 to 20 minutes first and then check the temperature. You wanna reach about 130 degrees Fahrenheit for a medium rare cut. We're gonna pull it out and let it rest for a little bit, but if it's not quite there in the 15 to 20 minutes and you see it's browning a little bit, you can cover it with some foil and then keep checking it every 5 minutes. Now, also another tip I like to use is I put a little piece of foil over the bones that are exposed because those tend to brown and burn a little bit quicker than the rest of the meat. So I like to just cover those up just to make sure that your presentation is gonna look as beautiful as your food is going to taste. So let's go ahead and put this in the oven. I love to pair this with a side of my roasted oven-baked carrots that you can actually roast at the exact same time that you're cooking your meat. So that way your meal comes together with one batch in the oven, and timing is absolutely perfect. By the time your carrots are ready, your meat is gonna be ready as well. And our rack of lamb is now out of the oven, and it cooked to a perfect 130 degrees, and it took about 35 minutes to get there. Now, when I pulled it out of the oven, I let it rest for about 8 to 10 minutes just to finish cooking while it started to cool, and then you can start to slice in between the rib chops and get about 8 to 10 perfectly cooked ribs. Now, I also cooked my oven roasted carrots at the same time and pulled them out at the same time as my meat, and they're perfectly tender. I sprinkled a little bit of extra fresh thyme, some sea salt on those, and this is gonna be a perfect meal. Came together so quickly, putting everything in the oven all at once and out at the same time. Now you can find this recipe in my cookbook, Wandering Palate, which is available on my website, thetrailtohealth.com, and it's also available on Amazon as well.